morning, everyone. It is September 26, 2023. Let the record reflect that 4 commissioners are present. So we have Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner Waldron, Commissioner Jordan, and myself. Commissioner French was not able to join us this morning. And then we will go ahead and just get started because we've got a busy morning, and then we will be adjourning early to go to the new stadium opening, which is exciting for downtown Spokane. So with that, and we won't talk about the Mariners.
Save it for miscellaneous.
Proclamation.
I got a whole speech ready, whole speech. It's more of a tirade.
So, Chandra, good morning. I see you're on Zoom.
Good morning, everyone. So quite a few things to update the board on this morning. So we are continuing to get organized to start providing the asbestos testing for our uninsured folks. I didn't get a chance to chat with Heather yesterday, so I'm not sure if we've gotten the contracts back yet from the 2 contractors we're working with. We do have a state reservist arriving on Monday who will be assisting my staff in overseeing that effort. We have finished the bylaws for the long-term recovery group. I have a request out for a quote for board insurance for that group. We decided we needed to get that done sooner rather than later, as we are starting to distribute some of those funds on a limited basis. And then we'll be, of course, starting the incorporation paperwork by the end of this week. We'll start getting that into the state. We received our draft disaster case management documents from the Salvation Army yesterday. So we will be reviewing those and hopefully get that contract put together and in front of you guys very soon. The long-term recovery group, we had a really good meeting on Thursday, and what we're going to do is we've decided it would really help folks to understand kind of the scope of the situation if we provided tours both for our electeds. So, all of you, any of our mayors or town council people, any of our state representatives or senators who would like to do that, we'll be setting that up in the next couple of weeks. Because we felt it was important that people understand both fires. They were very different in some respects in the fuels and how they burned. And it's important that folks be able to see that and understand kind of the different environment. So more to come on that as we work to get that scheduled. And then finally, I do have confirmation that we are getting $2.9 million from the Department of Commerce, specifically for debris removal. And I did have a discussion with Scott last week that this 2.9 million does come with a county cost share. It would be 25% of that total would be the county's responsibility. And I do want to reiterate that's very, very normal. That's how we normally do things in emergency management funding. It is part of 44 CFR, the federal law that overarches everything that we do. And if we had received a federal declaration, if we had received federal public assistance, there would have been a cost share attached to that too. So there's nothing strange or different about this offer, I guess, is what we could call it. But I will need to defer to you if the county is willing to take on the 25% cost match and accept these funds. And that is the end of my report.
Chandra, I apologize, did you mention the other 1.25 as well coming from
Oh, I did not. I forgot about that. We are receiving an additional $1.25 million from the governor's emergency fund, again, specifically for debris removal. And that will also have the 25% cost share attached to that as well.
So question, and maybe Scott, this is for you, is with the 25% cost share, and this is debris removal, is there funds in solid waste?
I would say likely not that we've identified. Part of what Kyle and Devin briefed last week is some of the outgoing liabilities are necessitating the need to bring up the gate fee out there to help us continue to absorb our costs with the unknowns of the transfer station management contracts, some of the bypass that we have to send to landfills. Those are probably fairly well identified to have to handle through those rates. So I don't think, and Kyle can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think we have the ability to absorb those within. We do have some different ideas, but I this state anything, Kyle?
Absorb, I would say that's not likely. We're already expecting a fund balance decline next year, even with proposed rate increases. The rate increases are on the docket. That if we wanted to consider something along those lines to tweak those, but the way they're proposed today, I wouldn't say that they're prepared to absorb.
So a couple of my team was talking through this late last week when we heard from Chandra and just trying to do some math in our heads, and we were kind of assuming if the rate of uninsured or underinsured stays consistent at about 40%. So we've done 100 cases, probably done more by now. If the remaining 366 homes that were lost, we say 40% are uninsured, underinsured, it tells us about 150 homes or so. And we just took a rough estimate of asbestos testing and demo and debris removal. Again, just rough. I think we assumed maybe 25 to 30,000. Applied it against that, figured out how much of the 1.25, and now that we've gotten confirmation of the 2.9, we figured the match would be in the $1 million range. So that's about what we need to identify to be able to utilize those funds. We know we've got some ARP funds of that 250 that we've returned to ourselves, and there's certainly some other areas that you might want to look at and say, can you reduce here, can you reduce there, to be able to pivot some of those dollars back. The dollars that Jeff has looked at are certainly eligible because we do have the emergency disaster provisions within ARP that can be utilized. So that might be a place that the commissioners want to take a look at for being able to identify some funds for matching these dollars.
So I guess having a conversation with Mayor Cooper last week, she was just talking about the need to, that there's no reserve for any of this. And since a lot of it is debris that would kind of fall on the responsibility of the county, that I'm just wondering if there's a way that we set up of, some kind of fee within the solid waste area that would then go into reserve for debris cleanup and match for the future. I don't know, but it's like, because it's not really a general fund, it's really, solid waste issues. And it wouldn't matter wherever in the county it would be, that we would need help with that in the future, because as we're seeing here, there's a lot of unincorporated Medical Lake area, unincorporated north area, it could be south area. I mean, they had that disaster last year. It wasn't declared a disaster, but where the kind of storm came through and took down a whole bunch of trees a year ago down in Rockford. That it really is on all of the citizens within the county to help, because I think at some point everyone's going to be using it. That how do we do that within the solid waste, which is where, to me, it falls, because it is getting those debris cleaned up, so that way we don't have it in our water, which would be then our water system, our aquifer, all of those things. That I think maybe that's the better place to look to what that future fee, it would have to be a fee, I guess, to put it into a reserve for that, but I think it's just something we should be looking at, because I mean, we just saw it happen here. And you hope it doesn't happen anywhere else, but you know, I think we've got to prepare that it's, you know, and Chandra, I guess, you know, you would be able to know. I mean, it's just one of the things that I think having had 2 fires right in, you know, at the same time, we have red flag warnings every summer. We've been really fortunate over the summer that for the most part, when we've had fires, the air has been able to get up and put them out quickly. But red flag days, we don't have that opportunity. They get grounded, so.
Well, and I think honestly, and I absolutely agree with you that it is a solid waste issue, and if there's something that we can do in terms of some type of fee for solid waste services, that's a perfect place to start. But I would also add that when we look at the growth that's happening in the county, the growth is not happening in our population centers. The growth is happening in our unincorporated areas and our bedroom communities, which sit squarely in that wildland urban interface where we have the highest fire risk. And so I think there needs to be discussion with, you know, with planning and zoning and the developers. If we're going to allow people to build in those areas, then we need to understand that as we allow building and development in those areas, we are exacerbating and increasing our risk. And so I think there could be, you know, some type of funding mechanism attached to the ongoing development in those areas, because that's where we're going to see the highest risk for this issue.
So, I mean, just things to
Yeah.
think about,
Yeah.
kind of as things have happened.
I think the commissioner certainly could look at assigning like I'll just say a dollar surcharge or something on some of the transactions that are specifically identified to go towards a disaster cleanup situation. And it's something that we could track in a reserve fund potentially, because as Commissioner Kearns mentioned last week, we don't currently have anything for Spokane County. We were talking with the state DEM folks. So it's certainly a way of planning for the future. We've got kind of the here and now, how do we address this particular one? So like I said, we have a couple ideas on how we might be able to do that, and I think it's a good idea to plan for the future as well.
Do we know if there's any difference in the way we can use enterprise funds compared to general fund when it benefits a property owner?
I don't know that off top.
I'd just like to look into that a little bit more, but I mean, I certainly, if that's the direction we just want to go, and use the solid waste rates to start establishing some sort of cleanup fund. Certainly have no objection to that. I just, that's a moving forward thing,
Right,
as opposed to what's available today, but
Right.
certainly worth considering.
And we'd have to, you know, work with legal to ensure, you know, how, if that would work or not. But I mean, I just feel like we're gonna continue to see, I would hope there's no more fires, but that's not reality. You know, and I don't know if some of the aquifer protection fee money would be, I mean, because you know, I know Mayor Cooper's been trying to, you know, say if we don't get this cleaned up by fall, you know, by winter, it's going to start to seep into the groundwater and not be good, depending on what the, you know, what's in that for hazardous materials in the fires. So I think we have to be just thinking ahead to protect the, you know, our water source and our community. So
Is 25 to 30,000 an adequate amount of money to clear a property? I have no experience with clearing debris from a fire. Is that, I don't know what it costs to clear a house that's burned down. Is $25,000 to $30,000?
That's
that in the
a
ballpark?
reasonable guess, Commissioner.
Okay,
You know, it obviously does depend if there were, you know, multiple outbuildings and things like that, and we may need to take a look at, you know, if it's a large property, you know, with multiple outbuildings or something like that, we would probably have to take a look at that and create some guidance on our, you know, are we going to clear the entire property at a cost of multiple thousands of dollars? Or are we going to focus on, you know, clearing the home site, you know, so that it's ready to rebuild and the bulk of the debris is gone? But 25 to 30,000 is a reasonable estimate, yes. For a typical one family home, yes.
okay,
Yeah, it's simply an estimate. There could be, if, as Chandra mentioned, it's up to multiple outbuildings, it could be 50. If you have a very small structure, single structure, maybe it's only 15 to 20. Just guesses, because I haven't seen any numbers from current property owners who had their homes destroyed to see what kind of costs are incurring.
and what types of properties are the ones that were uninsured? I mean, was it properties that had multiple buildings? Was it primarily properties that only had a home and no outbuilding? I mean, do we have any type of idea? I mean, or is it a mix of everything?
It's a mix of everything.
Okay,
And as a slight aside for the board's awareness, fire planning is going to be part of the 2026 comprehensive plan update. So, those aspects.
Sorry, I just wanted to make the commissioners aware of one other aside related to this. I went and visited there's 40 acres of county-owned property up in the Elk area here that we own, 4 10-acre parcels. It's actually adjacent to another 40 acres that state parks owns. State Parks contacted me to discuss, and I had a long conversation with their forester about doing a salvage logging operation on the county-owned property. It's general fund property, and so I'm gonna work with my team to at least reach out and get numbers. In theory, it should be low to zero cost if we do it right away. There are already Boggins is up there doing a lot of salvage logging on private properties. You know, as long as you salvage them right away, you can recover about the cost of the effort to do the logging to do it and be a good steward at the replanting. If we chose to replant, would be probably an additional cost. But I wanted the commissioners to be aware that we have property. I just visited, it's pretty much all scorched. And there's a lot of, you know, hazard trees out there. So I'll be, as quickly as I can, be bringing you all information to make a decision about whether or not you would like to move forward on that, if that's something the commissioners want me to continue to pursue.
We have similarly 2 parcels out around Silver Lake that are owned by parks. Not parks, they're just single parcels that have also had a similar situation where a lot of trees that were just that were burnt and are going to need to be addressed as well. Safety hazards might be able to do some salvage logging on it as well. I'm not sure how much how dense it was or how big the trees were. So Doug's team's been connected with Chandra just to make sure she was aware of that loss as well.
Chandra, are folks reaching out to you not understanding what's required as far as asbestos abatement? Like, I guess some of our offices or my office and Commissioner French's office have been getting a lot of calls from folks that seem to not understand what is needed as far as abatement. I thought we had been pushing that information out pretty well. Are you hearing that there's a lot of folks that sort of miss some of some of that information that we pushed out there about asbestos?
Well, I think the ongoing communication is always a challenge. And I mean, we're utilizing as many different channels for communication as we can. You know, you can always do more, you know, because folks are, you know, they've lost their computer, so they're not on the internet, or you know, they're not getting their mail, things like that. So we're continuing to push the message as much as we can. We're also working really closely with both of the community groups, the Elk Strong and the Reimagine Medical Lake. And so as they contact folks, they're sharing that information and pushing the information out. So it's an ongoing effort, but it'll be a while before we reach everybody. But it is an ongoing effort, yes.
Okay, and it looks like our building and planning page, if anybody goes to Spokane County Building and Planning page, there's a fire disaster relief tab. You click on it and it looks like the top link there says fire, demolition, and rebuilding FAQs. So if someone does reach out to you, we have something on our website. So that's for anybody. If anybody reaches out, looks like we've created a one-sheeter that's got simple questions and guidance on kind of moving forward and what you need to do, how to handle debris. So.
Yeah, and with the disaster reservists, so they will be physically in our office starting next week, but they actually started working remotely this week. And they are actively deconflicting all of our databases from the intake forms that we received at the Disaster Assistance Center that our communities have collected. And they're starting to actually call people and make contact with them to confirm, their insurance status and if they have a need for the asbestos testing and how we can assist them. So we're actually starting to follow up with folks and make direct contact as well.
All right.
And then Chandra, question I have, so as these funds come in and we figure out the 25%, then we transfer these funds to the nonprofit?
So the funds that we're receiving from the state are all reimbursable. So it'll work just like all of our COVID costs worked. So the county expended the money and then we invoice the state and we get the money back. So those are reimbursable. The only money that's coming directly to us is the $175,000 that we're getting from the health district. They're actually going to just transfer those funds to us for the asbestos testing. And in talking to Ray Byrne last week, their resolution is done and they'll be signing it at their board meeting on Thursday. And then they will just transfer the $175,000 to us. And that is specific for use for asbestos testing.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Chandra? Hey, thank you for keeping us updated.
Hey, you bet. Happy to answer questions. So I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay. And Kyle, that's gonna take us to your items.
Good morning, Commissioners. We just have a few traffic-related items to discuss this morning here. Our County Engineer, Matt Zaracore, is going to lead you through a few of the traffic code revisions.
All right, good morning. Thank you for the time. We kind of broke even on this one. We have 2 bridges we're adding restrictions to and 2 we're removing them from. So kind of a nothing. The first one is Cooley Heights. You can see up there, it's in the west part of Spokane County over Cooley Creek. And again, we've been through this before a number of times. There is new software from the state and they're having us analyze a new load. It's a single unit load. And so this restriction is 25 tons max, 50,000 pounds in any single unit. It just affects the bridges differently. So adding this one shouldn't be a huge impact on traffic. That 50,000 pounds still allows like our equipment to go over it loaded. So it's not a really, really restrictive one. It's just for extremely heavy single units. Any questions on that one? No, thank you. Next one is Parker. This one's up north. It's on the west side of Deer Park, just off Monroe, where Parker intersects Monroe. And it's over Dragoon Creek, and this is the same thing. It's that 25-ton load unit. It's the exact same reasoning. The new software, when they analyze it, this restriction pops up as needing to be in place. And again, it's not, Monroe's a pretty major arterial for us up north. Parker has some traffic, but not a huge one, and it's also got a couple of routes around it that are, if they do have an oversized load, they can utilize that. Any questions on that one? Next slide, please. This one is one that we're removing. This is Badger Lake Road. You can see on the dot on the map on the left there, it's in the very southwest portion of the county. It's where the overflow out of Badger Lake comes out. So this one, interestingly enough, when we analyzed it, did not require any restrictions anymore. So we're removing the restrictions. There was no construction work done. It's just a change in the analysis that the state provides the software, and when we reanalyze it, it didn't need to be restricted anymore. So that was a nice one. Doesn't happen very often. We'll take it. All right, next slide. And this last one is one we just got done rebuilding. This is Cheney Spokane Road, if you're familiar with that, just southwest of town here. And there's a little road that ties in Marshall Road, and we rebuilt the bridge with our own crews. And we can do that really cost effectively. Just kind of a little off topic there, but our bridge crew is ramping up and doing more and more of our small bridges, and they do a fantastic job. They just hit Dunn Road. They did this Marshall Road Bridge. We're trying to have them do 2 or 3 a year. They're anything under 20 feet, you might already be familiar with this, but they call them short spans, and they're not federally eligible for grant funds. So it's been really nice that our crews can take care of those, because we do not get federal funding, and if we put them out to bid, it costs a lot more than having our crews do them, obviously. And there's a number of new products they've been using. This was a pre-done deck, essentially, metal deck. They come in and they bring it in, and then we just do the abutments and put it in place. And we've also started ramping up our efforts to do our own foundation work, which will be another huge savings. We can either bundle those and contract them separately and do the foundation work for a number of bridges ahead of time, or we can come through with our own crews. And we've also been partnering with Whitworth County. They've actually got something that you can put on an excavator that drives foundations. So anyway, kind of an aside, but really been a cost-effective, successful thing for us that we're looking to continue, because we have a lot of these bridges that are not federally eligible that we have to do something with. And anytime we look at any large culvert or short span, they tend to grow. So, you know, it may have been a culvert in the past, a 4 or 6 foot, and now it needs to be a bridge. So if we can do that with our own crews, it's going to be a huge help going forward.
How many short spans do we have?
You know, we don't even have a great inventory. We've started putting a lot of effort into developing that inventory just so we can get our arms around what we have. Historically, we find them when they start failing the road, which is really bad in terms of budgeting and planning and traffic and everything else. So we're putting a lot of effort into developing a better inventory so we know what we have, we can program it better, and then put the funds aside and do them in a timely fashion. Organize, you know, start with the important arterials and work out. So all of that is coming.
Why are they not federally eligible again?
They have always had that 20-foot cutoff where they had to draw a line somewhere, right? I mean, there's just endless short spans depending on the community. And so that's where the line's always been, and I'm sure they don't want to move it, because you can imagine the outcry if they moved it one way or the other. Okay.
And just the way culverts and passage is going anymore, it's, like Matt said, these things just kind of get bigger over time.
Yeah, you know, with fish passage, it's unusual if we were to replace a culvert with any kind of flowing water that flows almost year round or nearly year round, and it doesn't become some kind of short span bridge. And obviously, if it makes sense, we do them large enough that they become part of our inventory. So in the distant future, when they need replaced, they'll at least be federally funded at that point. So anyway, all part of the game plan. Okay, that's it for bridges. Any questions?
I'm just gonna make a comment that I was just down in South County on Saturday, and I get lots of comments still about dirt roads, and
You do?
yeah, so.
Yeah.
So we'll have to have a conversation
Yeah, absolutely.
about that, so. So I never have to get through dirt road stuff. Or,
We have one more item to review in regards to vacation.
Okay, this one, next one, is kind of on the east end of town. You can see it's just north of Trenton Barker. Monte Del Rey is the name of the subdivision. It's a very old subdivision that has been platting out in more recent history. There's a long history, including a lawsuit that was settled. The developer on this one is Jack Castell. He's been a long-term developer and realtor in Spokane, and he's applying for this vacation. And this doesn't show it, but if you were to turn on contours there, this is basically chiseled out of the hillside here, and there's 10, 15, 20-foot cuts all around where this cul-de-sac is shown. So basically it's unbuildable the way it sits. So he's asking to vacate the cul-de-sac. We have zero issue with that. This little cul-de-sac, as you might imagine, offers no public benefit near or long-term. So we're more than happy to have it become some other form of access that's better for the lots and the development, and also doesn't go on our maintenance inventory. So fully supportive of this. Happy to answer any questions about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin. Justin, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. All right, we got two items before you. I'd love to discuss these. One is a follow-up to a request that the board made back in August, and one is a change with a provider with our Community Behavioral Health Rental Assistance Program. So the CBRA program is a joint project, Department of Commerce, providing behavioral health rental assistance and subsidy support for individuals with behavioral health conditions, generally those coming out of an inpatient setting who need additional transitional support where they may not be able to maintain certain either functional ability in the home and or income level that would maintain the housing, especially in this economy. And so this one provides for those that are transitioning with that history support either in a home and or a rental place or emergency housing in a hotel and or motel until such housing is situated. It was initially expanded to include our frontier rural communities, Stevens Ferry, Lincoln, Pend Oreille, and Adams counties. We put this out when we got this contract about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and no provider wanted to take it on because of the challenges and the simple reality that there wasn't much housing in the frontier rural regions. We put it out twice, no one bid in some of the counties, so we went out and we highly encouraged a provider to take this on, which was Northeast Washington Alliance Counseling Services. We already contracted with other services, so we asked them to take it on. In this last year, they admirably provided quite a bit of services, but then said, unfortunately, the administrative burden and workforce was just too challenging. They couldn't continue the contract. And so they asked essentially to close the contract and bow out. We didn't want to lose that resource in the Ferry, Stevens, and Lincoln counties. So we worked around the clock to get someone, and we finally was able to partner with Rural Resources. They agreed to take on the contract and provide and continue providing the services. So as part of CBRA, individuals who are receiving subsidies have ongoing support, and then individuals receiving emergency is those one-offs when those come up. So there was a handful of individuals still needing that service to be continually paid out. So in conversation with them, the request that we have before the board is close out the contract with New Alliance per their request and their contract allowance, and then to transition that contract to Rural Resources. We have gone through the procurement process repeatedly, and in the direct service portion that we have of the statute, we have the ability when there's only one loan provider to be able to award that to. They would just assume the ongoing expectations for those members already being covered, and then the continued grant requirement to take on new individuals. Next slide. This gives a little background. Rural Resources provides quite a bit of different services in our frontier rural regions, including community support, housing support. A lot of it's grant funded through various other avenues. This is going to be relatively new for them in terms of the behavioral health side. So just a little bit more information on that. But they're a wonderful partner. They've worked with us on various other avenues as well. Next slide. So our request to the board is that we transition the contract over to Rural Resources, and the agreement estimate for the Department of Commerce grants will be about $250,000 for the remainder of the year. Then we'll renew that contract or put it before the board next year. We do expect that the Department of Commerce will continue this grant moving forward. Any questions on CBEP? Excellent. And all of our other contracts within Spokane County and with the rest of the frontier rural counties are already in place. So we have Catholic Charities and CARES Division that's doing it for Spokane County. And we've done pretty amazing in that, getting all of the money out. It's close to $1.2 million we put out into Spokane County, supporting Spokane County residents and the residents of Pend Oreille County and Adams County.
Is this coming from, is it passed through from federal, through the state, these funds?
It's passed through the state Department of Commerce.
But is it from the state or is it?
Yes.
Is there a way that, is this something that we need to talk with the state about in terms of the administrative burden to manage the program and see if, I mean, I appreciate how hard you're working to find agencies to take on the program, but it does seem to be an ongoing challenge. Or do you see that just for certain agencies?
So we initially brought this forward to them. I think the challenge and why they came to us is because no one else would take it. And we're ones that are connected to the community. And so because we do great work, they said, can you please help us? And of course, we stepped forward. When we told them that we could not put this contract out to frontier rural communities, essentially saying, we're seeing most people come into Spokane County, they initiated their contract to allow for more funds to be in Spokane County Centric.
Okay.
Which is what we negotiated. I said I couldn't take that on if we didn't allow for the funds to actually be more representative of the ebb and flow of individuals and housing in Spokane County. Which is why you see the initial amount that went out was $1 million to the frontier rurals. We're seeing 90% of that actually being spent in the Spokane County region versus in our frontier rurals. The goal here is really to try to support them and say, hey, if you're available, we would love to have this money go out to your communities. Their response to us is, well, if you give us money for housing. So we also put a request to the Department of Commerce to say, can you free this up for one-time funding projects? Because before we can pay for someone to have a subsidy, we need to have housing. So if we could set some of the money aside for a project investment, that would also support long-term support those regions. And they said they're going to open that up to the legislature this year.
Okay.
Hopefully free us up so we'll be able to do awards in that way.
And that would make a lot of sense to have some designated units in some of these outlying areas so that folks can stay in those counties, stay in those rural areas.
Exactly.
But right now, there's not a lot of choices, is what you're saying. So they end up here in Spokane County.
Exactly.
Okay.
We are working with them and various providers to identify when that does come around, if they'd be open to taking on these projects for long-term low-income housing that would be able to support individuals with behavioral health conditions. So that's promising. So I've got some vision on the future and where this is coming. And
So
I think
something to think about in our legislative agenda.
Yes,
Okay.
it's very exciting.
Thank you.
All right. And the next one is our ISW project expansion. So the board approved for us and for the July 1 period for the expansion of the schools for Cheney, Riverside, and Freeman. But in August, Commissioner Cooney here brought forward to the board the concern regarding East Valley School District, the deaths of 6 students that have occurred within the last year, and the desperate plea that their community, as well as the school district, request for support. And one of the projects they identified and requested the support was through our project, because it's so integrated and provides not only the integrated survey portion, but also the follow-up with a licensed clinician. So the board gave direction for us to follow up and explore options for that, and we did. We followed up, and we already have a project provider that we contract with that is already in the schools, and we worked with the schools to identify them. So the goal would be to partner with ESD 101, which is currently providing contracted services for Riverside and Freeman. They had a location, they were already in there providing support to the students and faculty after the two most recent deaths. And so it just made sense to go with that. The school recommended that. And so that was the school provider that we selected as part of if we were to move forward. The secondary issue of this was funding. Would we go forward with continuing with the mental health sales tax that is currently funding the project, or would we partner with the Valley to take on part of their ARPA dollars, which they had identified having $1 million set aside to support the project? In exploring that, there's still a lot of work from the Valley that needs to occur before that money would be freed up and designated. In fact, interlocal agreements, expectations on how that service would be put forward, and then ultimately the council would have to vote. So in conversation with Scott and looking at what the needs are and being more responsive, I recommend to the board that we move forward with funding it under the mental health sales tax so we can get the service out immediately. And then the board would still have the option to move forward for the future to explore this option with Spokane Valley if you so choose. It doesn't remove the option, but it does ensure that we get providers immediately in the school for the school year, which is what the request is. And we delay the conversation about what would be interlocally agreed upon with Valley without limiting the service or affecting how that would be applied at this stage. Again, just kind of postponing that conversation if the board chooses later. Next slide.
I'm fine with us using mental health sales tax, but at the Council of Governments, one of the council members came up to me and they indicated that, I mean, this would have been like 3 weeks ago at this point. They indicated that they had taken a vote to dedicate funds. Is that, did I misunderstand what they were saying?
So my understanding is they did take a vote to allow their team to begin the process of exploring the administrative.
Okay.
And their team has not yet reached out to finalize that conversation. Once they actually get that together, then we'd have to go back to them for a final vote to approve it.
Okay.
And they didn't give me a time frame on it.
Okay. Okay.
So I know I've had conversations with a couple of council members and with some of our staff that they want to dedicate this money. Partly they've heard how great our program is and all of that. Their dollars are more flexible than our dollars. You know, our dollars need to go towards this as mental health 110 money. And I think their dollars could be used in a more flexible way in the community, because I know like Central Valley School District had to discontinue the Communities in Schools program within their schools. And so they could use those funds to then help reinstate those for, you know, the next couple of years while Central Valley is trying to get their funding levels back up. So I think there's opportunities that we can work to enhance each other instead of, I feel like, you know, I don't want to work against each other, but you know, Justin already has the program, and again, it's like let's let Justin move forward with this program, have Justin and his team be managing it instead of, if the Valley starts to come alongside, then he's going to be going to council meetings, just, you know, talking about what's happening with them and stuff. And I think I know Scott and I talked about this too, feeling that, you know, just leave it as our program and let them use their dollars as another opportunity to get further benefit to the community out there. So I think that's how I saw it. Instead of taking their funds away, they've got opportunities that they can use those dollars.
Yeah, I am under the impression that their ARP resolution to identify how to use those funds was more general in terms of we'd like to use them for mental health purposes for children in school. They didn't specifically say the SBART program. It's been one that we've been running for a while, and as Justin's been looking to expand it. I think it does provide an opportunity for, if that's what the council wants to do, maybe look at, and Justin may have some good ideas for them, other areas that you might be able to utilize those funds for, or do you want to purpose them somewhere else? I believe, as I was talking with Jeff yesterday, the Valley took all theirs as revenue replacement, so they can do a lot of different things with them up and even to something completely different from this. So that was my understanding as it stands
So they're,
in conversations.
they're much more flexible.
Yeah.
Dollars that they have. And I know that they're just developing a task force for youth homeless. I was just talking to the superintendent of Central Valley School District that he's gonna be on it for the city of Spokane Valley. And so I mean, so there's opportunities, again, for those more flexible dollars versus our dollars that are not flexible that way.
And I think the Valley City Council probably benefit from the same information that Justin's presented to the Board of County Commissioners in terms of how effective that SBIRT program is, because there's a number of schools that are in the valley that are this program is being run in. So I think it would be really helpful for them to get an overview of the program. And you have a really great succinct document that goes through the program from the last year and could do something similar for next year as it gets expanded into East Valley and other locations.
Yeah, and we actually have a meeting with them scheduled for this coming week to go over this project. And my recommendation to them, instead of, if we have the funds and the board supports the expansion of this project, then reinvesting the funds to support a current project like communities and schools within East Valley only further enhances the response and supports no duplication of effort, but a greater response to the need that exists, right? A holistic approach to a comprehensive need. Whereas if we don't, and they don't apply that, there's a possibility communities and schools may not be able to maintain it because of other grant challenges that they're facing. Right now, there will be FAST, there'll be our program, there will be ESD 101s, their education support, and then there'll also be communities and schools. I think that's a wonderful, more wraparound approach than just doing one. And that would be my recommendation. We haven't had the opportunity to talk to their team yet. And it would be very minimal in terms of administrative. I know that one of their concerns was administratively putting a new program out. They would just be accepting a new program, again, relaying some of their fears about wanting to go with us. So I think it's better overall if I can convince them to go that route.
I think we will get a lot more services out to that community to really benefit the youth and the families out there.
Yes, I was just gonna chime in. I worked really closely with communities and schools to implement all sorts of youth wellness after-school programs, you know, in the northeast part of Spokane City. And it's a great organization. They often have trouble, you know, just raising the funds privately to match any school dollars that are available. And I know CV kind of had to cut back. So they're a great overarching program that connects youth to programs like this particular mental health, you know, outreach. So it's these coordinators that are embedded in the school really build strong relationships with youth and build trust. Sometimes they run after school programs. And so it really is more generic youth wellness, while this one is very specifically mental health focused. So I see it, you're right, it's a really good connection. So maybe communities and schools could also help present their, you know, their program, and so there could be an understanding of how they align.
They're already reaching
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, we're working on that.
Good.
So putting this before the board is essentially we've already looked at a couple different options, just getting direction so that I can move forward with moving either with the Valley and saying we confirmed or not, and then beginning the option with communities and schools to discussion with the Valley to say, hey, not this, but this. Again, this does not remove the option for the board to consider this later if you so choose. I know there's limitations on the Valley's timeframe on their funding, so that may be a different conversation.
I'm happy to move forward using the mental health fund $10, which is what we're doing with the other school districts, so it's just consistent.
And the funding is just for 2 additional staff members in East Valley, so it really is just double the cost, about $240,000 additional, roughly bringing it up to about $570,000 for ESD 100.
I agree.
So we'll see that on next week's agenda.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
You got 4 head nods.
Excellent.
Mine was verbal.
Dorothy's
verbal.
Always appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Just to be clear.
Thank you. So then we got Scott Chesney. We have Tammy instead of Jessica. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, Jessica's not here? So glad to see you, Tammy. Nice to see you, Mary. Thanks. Good morning. Good morning. I'll let you go ahead.
Commissioners, we're here to brief you on a possible shoreline amendment on Liberty Lake. You've had the staff report. I think we've got a map that we can put up. Looks like it's coming right there. This is in the southeast corner of Liberty Lake, and I'll let Tammy give you the specifics on this. It's a technical process that we go through for these amendments. It's important for you to realize the Planning Commission did hold their public hearing. They took comment, and ultimately they voted to not approve this amendment by a 2-4 vote. And sometimes that makes the procedure here a little bit complicated or not intuitive. If the board wishes to agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation and act accordingly and simply receive and consider that application, your action would also be to deny the amendment. If the board wishes to re-examine that in a different way, then you would be needing to hold a separate public hearing to open that up for your own deliberations. And in either case, your action goes to the Department of Ecology for ratification. So the Ecology Department kind of gets the last view on this project. But I guess I just wanted to make sure if you pass this along in our normal course of events, you would be agreeing with the Planning Commission's recommendation to deny this permit. I'll let Tammy jump in. Just one last piece though. We did receive quite a lot of public comment on this from both agencies and individuals, overwhelmingly in opposition to the amendment. And that packet's available, was posted on your agenda packet, and all of the information is always available on our web as well. So with that, I'll let Tammy give you the technical description.
So we received an application to amend the shoreline master program, most specifically the map, the shoreline, official shoreline map designation. And so for the property, this is a 52-acre piece that contains about 6 acres of shoreline east of and adjacent to Liberty Lake. The applicant, which is Zephyr Shores LLC, is requesting to change the map designation from a natural designation, which is the most restrictive of designations within the Shoreline Master Program, to rural conservancy and the rural conservancy environment. And if you look at that map, the green area on this 52-acre parcel is the natural designation, that 200-foot shoreline jurisdiction, which leads from the property southeasterly down and connects to Liberty Lake Regional Park. To the north, where you see some lots that were created, there are actually single-family residences on those. That's in the rural conservancy environment. This piece of property has a little bit of history with it. So actually, the current owner who purchased the property in 2016 has refurbished a historic lodge that was built there in about 1908. It was established as the Zephyr Hotel and Restaurant and had been a speakeasy prior to that, had a second lodge, cabins, bunkhouses, those types of things. And the current owner runs that as an event center. So for weddings, meetings, reunions, that sort of thing. The applicant has stated in the application materials that they would like to change the shoreline designation in order to maybe divide some residential lots off of that 52-acre piece of property that would have a shoreline setback of 150 feet from the shoreline, rather than the natural environments to require 200-foot setback because of the change in value of the lots. So going back to the historic use, the Zephyr Hotel and Restaurant was operated for a number of years up until the late 1920s, early 1930s. It was then purchased by the Catholic Diocese and then ultimately purchased by a number of churches purchased it together to run it as a church camp and retreat center. And so it was in operation until probably about 2010 to 2012. And so those former uses have been recognized by Department of Building and Planning through a non-conforming use determination. Now, as far as the shoreline amendment, the shoreline program, section 13, allows an amendment if there are criteria that are met. And so within section 13, there are actually two different sets of criteria that have to be met to approve a shoreline amendment. And this application was scheduled before the Planning Commission for a public hearing on July 27th. And they listened to public comments both for and against the project. Of agencies that sent in comments, Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District was very concerned about the proposed amendment and possible impacts that it would have to the shoreline of Liberty Lake and then to the water quality of Liberty Lake. This is the last stretch of natural designation on Liberty Lake, with the exception of the Liberty Lake Regional Park. And then there were quite a few residents of the Liberty Lake area who submitted written comments and testified at the public hearing against the proposed designation. At that August 31st meeting, the PC voted to continue deliberations on the item till their August 31st meeting. And at that meeting, as Scott had mentioned, after deliberations, they voted 2-4 to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners, which ended up being then re-voted on, and a majority of the PC members were in favor of recommending against approval. So to recommend not to approve the shoreline amendment to the Board of County Commissioners. And their reasons for that, if you look at the findings of fact that you'll be accepting next Tuesday, the reasons for that were section 13.3 requires that in order to process an amendment, that one of 7 criteria that are listed there be met. The applicant argued that this amendment was necessary in order to correct an oversight or an error when that original designation was established in 2012 with the adoption of the Shoreline Master Program. And then also that it was necessary to protect a historic or prior use of the property. The Planning Commission disagreed with that. They, one of the members of the Planning Commission was actually on the commission at the time that the shoreline analysis for all of the shorelines of Spokane County was undertaken as part of that original Shoreline Master Program adoption in 2012, and said that this had been debated at that time. It was decided to leave it in the natural designation. Additionally, section 13.4 of the Shoreline Master Program states it lists 4 criteria, and all of those 4 criteria must be met in order to approve. The Planning Commission disagreed that the first criteria, which was the amendment is necessary to protect the public health, safety, or general welfare, hadn't been met, that the applicant hadn't demonstrated that that bar would be met by approving the amendment. And so that's where we are now with that. As Scott mentioned, the board does have the option of either adopting the Planning Commission's recommendation, which would be to not approve the requested shoreline amendment, or to hold your own public hearing for the purpose of taking public comments and then making a decision is the other option. So, do you have questions? It's a lot.
Go ahead. So, what, just going back to the historic uses of a retreat center, you know, venue for small events, weddings, retreats, those uses are still allowed?
Those uses are still allowed through a non-conforming use determination, and so the current owner applied for that when they purchased the property in 2016. Building and planning did allow for that at the same scope and scale of the previous uses. So it couldn't be turned into a much larger use. They couldn't have general restaurant use or general commercial uses. It had to stay with respect to what had been allowed over the years.
Okay, thank you.
It's certainly, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just kind of repeat back so I make sure I understand?
Yes.
So there's certain criteria that the applicant must meet in
Yes.
order for this to be accepted or the request to be approved.
Right, the shoreline program states that, so it gives you two different sets of criteria, one for processing, and one of these 7 criteria have to be demonstrated by the applicant. The other set of criteria is the next step, and all 4 of those criteria must be met in order to approve, is what the shoreline program states.
And planning commission did not feel that some of the mandatory elements were met.
Correct.
Do we have any reason to believe that they were incorrect in that finding?
It is their finding to make, based on their deliberations and their listening to public testimony and reading the staff report. So I would say no, we have no reason to think they erred.
There were 2 members that disagreed with those findings. And so they had different feelings about that, but the majority decided that those 4 criteria, that second bar, couldn't be met, and stated specifically that they didn't see how approval of the amendment advanced the overall public health, safety, and general welfare is the way it's worded.
And just to be kind of a legislative note, one of the members was absent, so that's why it was a 2-to-4 vote. There were only 6 members voting. There was no abstention or declaration of stepping out. It was just an absent member.
So my question is, when do you anticipate to, so you want to put this on next week's agenda to receive that?
In the normal course of events, next week, you would receive the Planning Commission's recommendation and set the following Tuesday for its consideration. If you do that and consider it on your consent agenda, you would be agreeing with the Planning Commission and denying the amendment.
So I have a lot of questions that I would like to get answered, that would take longer than we have today. Since this is in my district, and I certainly get a lot of comments from people on this property.
Yes.
As you know, you have and I have. It's been something that since I've been commissioner since 2017, I've gotten a lot of comments over the years. So I would like to make sure that I understand all sides before making a decision on it. And so I don't know if that's delaying it a week before it comes to us for that, or if I can just get that answered as it comes forward to the commissioners.
It's entirely your choice. This is not tied to any comp plan amendment cycles. This does not have to be done. This can be done entirely on your calendar. It does not have to be completed in the next few weeks.
Okay. I guess then I would just ask for one more week before it comes back as the recommendation to us. So it wouldn't be on next week's agenda, it'd be on the following week's agenda, so I can get.
Would you like us to come back next week, or would you just like to have us answer your questions?
I would like to sit down and have a conversation with you.
Okay.
That sounds good.
We will delay and we will
Okay, just
wait to
one
hear
week,
from you.
so that way then I can come have that conversation because I just want to make sure I fully understand. I understand comments from both sides, but I want to make sure I understand the legal side from from what your recommendations were to the planning commission, and then what the planning commission decisions were. More fully
Yes.
than just reading it. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time. Have a good day.
Okay, that takes us to Mike. Mike, why don't you come down here?
I have 4 coming,
We
so
have 4 coming, okay,
yeah.
come over here.
Okay.
Come sit by me,
Come sit back.
so you can be on the video.
Yeah, I have 4 out there. This can be a conversation. Yep, you guys are done on that end.
And so, do you just start?
We'll wait for you.
I'll sit over here. Go ahead. Sit next to the boss, yeah. Commissioner King. Anyway, so I think we've got something to get Larry before the meeting tomorrow at 10. Good morning, commissioners. I'm here to talk about the site in conjunction with Measure 1 and going through the conditional use permit process. Some of the discoveries we made along the way, and I brought the expert team to help talk about this, Deborah Perkins, and then Eric Walls, and then Ken Moore and Jim Amacio. So Ken, you want to kick us off, please?
Sure. Let's go ahead and look at slide 2, and as usual, the maps are hard to see on the screen. I apologize. Just to orient you a little bit with what you're seeing on the right side. There we go. It appears, so you've got a red boundary around county campus. Along the top there in the pink, you can see the STA building with the triangular piece up there, kind of get a feel for where you're at. The new tower and the community correction center are highlighted in yellow, and you can see some very light blue lines from here. At least they look like those are our parcels across the county campus. So you can see we overlap a few parcels there with the new buildings. And then just south of those yellow boxes, you'll see the jail. It's a little light, I apologize. That's how it comes up in Scout. And then the PSB building, public safety building just below that, and the courthouse. So you got a little bit of a sense for what that map is showing you. Again, just here to give you a quick update since we last met in early August to talk about some of our land use efforts, specifically around the CUP, conditional use permit. Again, just a reminder, we had submitted in the summertime pre-application materials to the city so that they could advise us on the work effort going forward to achieve an approved CUP. And since that time, we've been looking at several pieces. The SEPA, or the environmental impact statement that we're putting together. We have boundary line adjustment effort to do. There's a zone change that needs to be performed. There's tall building standards and floor area ratio standards, which are a little bit foreign to me, but maybe familiar to you, but things that we have to adhere to. We've been doing some parking analysis and, impact with parking spaces going away and being added as a result of these new buildings. Also looking at trip generation and distribution, just knowing where the outbound vehicle traffic will be going and how that impacts the neighborhood, along with design review and numerous other things that are required of us. So in terms of the conditional use permit and our efforts there, our goal is to try to get that out the door in November. And it could potentially be a 6 to 8 month effort. It's rather lengthy, engaging in the submission effort, the comment period, the appeal period, et cetera. So it could take us into the summertime for sure. Next item on the list is the boundary line adjustment, or BLA. Again, referencing the blue lines you see under the yellow building. We've got several, I think upwards of 4 parcels that lay underneath the yellow boundary that we would need to aggregate according to the city. And we've got Deb Firkins here, the county's expert on these things. Happy to answer any questions, but my understanding again is city requires us to, anywhere a building crosses over a parcel line, we have to aggregate those into one parcel, so we'll look to do that. It does require a title report, times potentially upwards of 20 parcels, a survey, so there's some additional cost. We kind of look at it as a housekeeping effort for the county. I think in Deb's just initial high-level research, I don't want to speak for you, Deb, but you found some anomalies in the paperwork, right? That maybe you want to talk to that just a little bit about the cleanup effort?
I did find some of our deeds were poorly recorded, and so some of the pages were missing when they were recorded initially, like the legal description, which is a bad thing to have missing. And so I did go through and re-record some of our deeds for this, and I would like to get a title report over the entire site if possible, so that I can find out if we granted any easements, if we've granted other things through the years that we don't really remember or know. It would be nice to have that housekeeping item done.
And roughly, Deb, we're talking about 2 to 3 months maybe to get the title report and the survey completed.
Yeah, the title report I probably can get within a month, but to get the survey, it's at least 2-3 months after that.
Okay.
And so we definitely need to do that. And I guess it's charging us $500 a parcel for the title report because they're commercial lots. So it adds up.
It's a little bit of a chunk, yeah, about $10,000 potentially for the title reports, and the survey could be $5,000 to $10,000. So somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. Ron, if you would please go up to slide, I don't know, I guess that would be 3 with the SEPA and the zone change. One more. Other direction.
Go back, I guess.
Yeah, backwards, please. There you go. SEPA, thank you. All right, so Environmental Policy Act, SEPA, in other words, environmental impacts. With Aaron Qualls and team's help from SCJ Alliance, we've put together environmental impacts. I mean, it talks about things like aquifer recharge area impacts, stormwater, air emissions from the new buildings, surface water impacts, plant and animal impacts, light glare. We've got that worked up now. It's probably 95% complete. We should have that ready to go for submission by, we're hoping, the end of the week. We'll review it in the next couple of days. And at that point, Mike will be in charge of issuing a DNS or a determination of no impact we feel will be appropriate. And in terms of the turnaround on that, there is a 21-day comment period and a 14-day appeal period. So we should have that concluded probably around early to mid-November. County being the lead agency on that effort.
I think that's critical, board members.
Yeah.
When when a public agency is lead agency on a particular project, they become the lead agency and the department head responsible for the project is the responsible official. So in this case, we filled out the environmental checklist, very detailed, done a great job. Mr. Sparber will determine what kind of determination to make with regard to the checklist. It's our anticipation will be a termination of non-significance. And the reason I say that is because the county, as the applicant, has included as part of the project a lot of conditions that someone might attach and make a mitigated determination. But when we add them to the project, you can issue a DNS. And so we feel very comfortable that the environmental checklist is very well done. We've used the county's standard checklist, which is the Department of Ecology's checklist. And the county actually has added some questions to our checklist, which we've also filled out and completed as Ken has addressed. So we're moving along on that particular project. The environmental checklist includes all the permits necessary for the project. Conditional use permit, which we always knew we were going to need. The rezone, which we need. The boundary line adjustment, which we need, and some other minor permits for the project. So the environmental checklist must include all the permits that we're seeking in conjunction with the project.
So if one of the buildings, how big is how many stories is the larger facility planned?
5
If
stories.
it wasn't
100
five,
foot.
if it wasn't 5 stories, would you need to change the zoning? Just wondering what those stories would.
So I can jump into item number 4 there, and I'll show you the next slide, and we'll talk through
sorry,
that. And if
jumping
that doesn't
ahead.
answer your question, let me know. Sorry, Ron, can you take me up to the map just above that? Thank you. So yeah, the main tower behind the jail will be a 5-story structure, approximately 100 foot tall. And to the east of that is the Community Corrections Center, which is a 3-story structure, approximately 40 foot tall. And you can see the brighter pink to the north there that the yellow buildings reside on. That is a GC 70, so a 70-foot max zone. And everything to the south of the jail is 150.
Yes, I understand that. I'm asking if it was a shorter building, would you have to make the zoning change? If it was a 3 or 4 story building?
Potentially, no, we wouldn't have to.
Just, that was my question.
Height of the structure requires the rezone. That's your
Yes.
question, as we presently proposed it. That is correct.
Okay.
But we still need the boundary line adjustment under any circumstances, I believe.
Yeah.
And we still need this, I'm sorry, Commissioner, I interrupted.
Just to clarify, so the rezone would be something the city has to approve?
Well, you're correct, Commissioner, and that's why we're here today. We are moving forward with the environmental checklist, the CUP, the rezone, and the boundary line adjustment. And we want to be sure the board is aware of what we're doing, and because we intend to move forward unless the board indicates that they don't want us to do so. So that's the reason why we're here, board members.
Did Aaron have something that, do you want to add anything, Aaron?
No, I think one thing that the zone change would do with respect to the boundary line adjustment potentially is that you don't want a parcel to have split zoning, right? And so if it is all consolidated to be a part of the existing jail, then the city would want then the city would not want a resulting parcel to have 2 different zones on it. So it is potentially somewhat of a cleanup effort. But you're right, Commissioner, if you do not need the height above 70 feet, it wouldn't necessarily require a zone change. It is primarily due to the height. I will add that the comprehensive plan, the future land use designation for the area is the same. So this, a lot of times when applicants want a zone change, they have to ask for a comp plan change as well. It's not the case here.
And I would just add the stories match up with the forecast and the projected beds that we need out to 2053, 30-year plan.
So that's the extent of the update, unless there's any other questions.
Quick question, on the 20 to 25,000, is that title report that you said
Yeah.
should be
title
done?
report.
Is that like a prerequisite to these things moving forward? That has to be done first?
If you want your survey, in order for me to get a survey, they always want to have a title report to help them along. And so I would need it for that. For the zone change, I don't think you need it for the zone change.
Makes for a
but-
cleaner application.
Yeah, but since we're going to move some boundary lines around in order to put the building down, right now the jail is divided, it's on 2 parcels, and so the city wouldn't allow us to build the jail now with it being on 2 parcels. And so to get it into 1 parcel is cleaning that up there. So your new jail definitely couldn't be on 3 or 4 parcels. You'd have to put it under 1. So there's a lot of cleanup of the parcels.
Yeah, it's similar to what we're doing at the stadium in the valley. It's trying to get that cleaned up because they don't want to issue building permits on different parcels. So
They don't want your water on one and your sewer on a different one.
It looks like a bit of a mess.
It is.
There's some strange lines in there.
Yeah.
Strange little skinny
Yeah,
parcels.
that's the old railroad right of way. That was near there.
And I would add to that, the height of the building as it currently is anticipated is over the 70. It's not to say that it couldn't be designed, and we will continue to look for ways to design it to be lower. However, the BLA is a really important one so that we're not crossing property lines. And the zoning does allow some cleanup because it's all our campus, and it is odd to have multiple zones in our, I should say it's odd. It's not helpful in the long run for us to have multiple zonings on our campus when we really look at the campus as a whole. So whether we would have to use it in the near term or whether it be enabling future needs for it should we decide to build another building of greater than 70 feet, it just helps us prepare for that in the future. But again, we still will look at design efforts that could reduce the height, maybe widen the base of it and whatnot to enable something that's a little bit shorter.
Absolutely.
So Commissioner CUNY, the reason we're here today is you wanted to, as Mike and Ken indicate, update the board on what we are doing, and to be sure if the board had any questions, we could answer them, and to be sure they knew that we were moving forward with the SEPA, the conditional use permit, the rezone, and the boundary lot line adjustment, as Ken has indicated. And if they had any concerns about that, they'd let us know today. And as I look around the board, I hope we've answered all your questions. And so we'll continue to then move in the direction we're moving.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
One last question.
Oh.
So the STA, bus barn maintenance facility, so that's technically on, we wouldn't be asking for a zone change for that.
No.
That's just shown on the map. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a 10:30 exit conference with the health district I have to be on. So we can get that audit closed on time since I pushed, since there was issues with that, getting done. So anyways, I'm gonna have to jump out. So can we have miscellaneous extend to this afternoon after the 2 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say we should continue it on the record.
Okay, I know, we've got the right of way, gentlemen are here, so let's maybe do that one, but then, I know I've got a miscellaneous issue. Mine's not on here, but. Oh, well, I can't extend mine till this afternoon. Okay, Doug, as you guys come up, this afternoon we have a labor contract on the agenda. And it's come to my attention through discussions with Attorney Chris Anderson that has not gone through legal review. So I'm not comfortable signing off on that until it goes through legal review. Is that gonna be, I don't know for Ashley, a problem with it?
Oh, there she is.
So, commissioners, that's new. We've never done that since I've been here. So is that a new step you're asking us to start doing?
Well, I guess it's something that I thought was happening in the past, so it's new to me that it's not because it was happening in the past prior, under the old.
Okay.
So, because, yeah, we just wanna make sure that, you know, as you guys know, I mean, you're not the attorneys to make sure that we're meeting all the laws and requirements, and so I wanna make sure that the attorneys are doing that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That was not something I had been asked to do before. So yeah, we'll get that done.
So can we, if we delay 1 week, is that gonna be an issue?
We'll have to do some back pays and things like that, but we'll figure it out. It just creates extra work on the back end.
Okay, but since it's such a small contract and as we're going into this whole new phase, I just wanna make sure that everything's, been taken care of properly.
Okay, yep, we'll send it that way.
Okay, so we will, I don't know which item number that is. Do you know which item?
I don't have it in front of me.
So that one we couldn't, yeah, we can figure it out by this afternoon.
Yeah.
So that's why I did wanna make sure we brought that up prior to.
It is item 4C, matter of authorizing budget learning.
Okay, so, Doug
Right, good morning, Commissioner.
and Chris, Doug, thank you.
Yes, I have Mr. Christoph and Mr. Evans with me here today. So I appreciate your time and decided to come back and follow up on the boundary line adjustment and right-of-way dedication item that was briefed on last week. And as you can see, we have the precise documents now that were in progress a week ago. So hopefully this will be a much more informed discussion. And as I understand, there was a request to look at this where we would break out the right-of-way dedication separate from the boundary line adjustment, which is an option. The engineers and the surveyor and working with the city have combined that, and we have it separated. So we have both options to share with you today. We've had a chance to do additional research and have been able to confirm that there is the option, should you choose, to include the right-of-way dedication with the boundary line adjustment at the same time. The survey work has been done. The attorney has had an opportunity to review that. The title report was done and reviewed. And again, we can pursue it both with and without. But with that, I'll go through. Next slide, please. And show precisely what that looks like. So here is yes, and as you can see, I think last week it was unknown whether the right-of-way dedication would apply to 1 or 2 parcels. We have absolutely clarified it is only 1, and the 1 parcel that it applies to, we have good title, and we have no concerns with the dedication of right-of-way on the applicable parcel. And that is what you see up there. So this particular graphic shows that would be parcel A as it's identified on the screen, and there is existing on the left, proposed on the right. Next slide, please. Again, this version includes the right-of-way dedication. There's a detailed of the parcel on the left, parcel A, and the right-of-way dedication on the right. Next slide, please. And then this is the same option, if you will, that separates the right-of-way dedication. So again, you see the before, the existing on the left, the proposed on the right, if we were to separate out the right-of-way dedication. Next slide, please. And again, the parcel not including the right-of-way. And it's really that northwest corner there, fronting on Havana and Broadway. Next slide, please. Here's a close-up of what's described as parcel B on the left that will contain the stadium, and it will eliminate the existing buildings that cross the boundaries and accommodate the additional buildings or expanded buildings that are in progress as part of the renovation. And again, that shows modified C. Next slide, please. And here is my free-handing, if you will, conceptual of what the new boundary would look like if one were to have fun trying to hand draw the lines over the top of an aerial photo. So it's approximate, but again, I sure enjoy utilizing our what we have technology today that really provides a great picture, and you can see how we now really follow the line there with the adjusted boundary.
It's not a Sharpie, right?
Don't
No
zoom in
comment.
too
Yeah.
close. Next slide, please. And this is a close-up, and it's a little difficult to see, but hopefully where it says future building footprint, you can see they outlined the future building footprint in gray there. And if you look really close, you can see where that's been outlined with the clubhouse expansion to the left of that as well. And so I think there was some concern with what that front entry might look like when we're done. So the next couple slides will help show that, but there's the existing fence line. The blue line represents the boundary, which would allow for that 10-foot setback, if you will, from the building, although there will not be a fence on the boundary per se. You can see we're intending to follow the existing fence line there on the entry. We are looking to adjust the fencing a little bit in regard to the expanded clubhouse building so we can maintain a walkway. And I've tried to impose that there on prospective fence line that shows approximately what the future fence line may look like in order to, again, retain access through there if you were to look at that expanded clubhouse. We'll still maintain access into the fairgrounds, and we're going to, in fact, our goal is to clean up the entry to the fairgrounds and improve it. Next slide. So that was a little gray this morning. So again, we're on the ground looking at the front. You can see the existing gates there. Next slide. And here we're looking a little bit closer. It's hard to see. Hidden in that grouping of trees is a 20, 30-year-old bus stop that hasn't been accessed. And the next slide, we'll zoom in on that a little bit. And we can almost see it there. And so really, this is an opportunity to clean that up. The front of the future building will be in the vicinity of the kind of the sidewalk portion, again, consistent with the aerial photo, but this allows you to see what that will look like more on the ground. There's actually an island in the background right in front of the cylinder that's on the ground. We're looking to clean up. It was left behind as a part of a prior project. And so when we're done, we're really hoping to have a much more attractive entry into the Fair and Expo grounds. There'll be an opportunity to include signage on the side of the building to recognize the Fair and Expo grounds along with the stadium.
Like how there's just one random bench. nothing around it.
Looks very lovely.
Yes,
I made that comment to Doug this morning.
Whose bench is that?
Maybe the commissioner's bench.
It was the lone bench following the fair.
Okay.
So, there we go. And again, the following slides have the detail exhibits as prepared by the surveyor. Next slide, please. We have the legal descriptions. Again, this one would include the right-of-way dedication. Next slide. The legal that doesn't include the right-of-way dedication. Next. Again, future parcel B, legal description. Next slide. C, next slide. And there we go. So I guess with having the detailed information that we now have, if the board is open to it, Staff would recommend incorporating the boundary line adjustment along with the right-of-way dedication, if the board is comfortable with that, where it would be done as one single action with the city in completing the boundary line adjustment. It would incorporate that right-of-way dedication. If you're not comfortable with that, we can separate that out. We would look at utilizing the very same documents that are here before you unless there are concerns with what we're proposing to dedicate in either scenario, whether we do it as two actions or as one. I believe one could simplify the process, again, if there's a comfort level.
So this was a follow-up item to last week. There were a number of boundary line adjustments that are necessary to not only do the work on the Vista Stadium, but also future work on the Parks Admin Building. Doug's team and consultants had done the boundary line adjustments on the upper portion around the Fair and Expo buildings and the Vista Stadium. The consultant team is still working on the graphical depictions and the actual BLAs down to the south and elsewhere on the property. So we don't have all those done, but we do have the stuff for Vista Stadium, which is really critical for us to be able to get going with demolition permits and other permits on it. Those are critical. Doug and I both had a conversation because there was also some significant questions around the right-of-way dedication and the need for it. We both talked with John Holman from the City of Spokane last week, asked him why this is being connected with the boundary line adjustment. He assured us it does not have to be connected. It'll be separated from that. There's more work that needs to be done on the right-of-way dedication to even indicate what, if any of it's needed. There is some that's absolutely needed, but we're just not sure how far to the east it needs to be. So we had concluded that we've got the ability to move forward on the boundary line adjustments separate from right-of-way dedication. We don't need to do those right now. And that will enable us to be able to get permits pulled for the critical construction path project process that we have. So we don't have the right-of-way final request yet from the City of the Valley because we've separated those two. And given there was some consternation expressed last week around it, I think it's something we still want to bring back to show you what the actual request is once it's done.
So you're recommending that we do it without the right-of-way dedication?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any
I know
concerns?
it's another step, but I'm not comfortable yet. I haven't seen what the final is to know what the ask is.
Any concerns moving along with that? Commissioners?
Nope, I don't think.
All right,
Let's do it.
I think there you have it.
Okay, we will proceed with the boundary line adjustment, separating out the right-of-way dedication and look to come back to you at a later time with that. Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Okay, well, we all gotta hit the road up to the ribbon cutting, so we'll kick some miscellaneous to this afternoon. How do I just state that, make sure we're doing that all correctly?
I think, I think probably a quick motion would be the best way to do it because we have it on the agenda this morning.
Okay,
So
or do we
simply-
just continue this? We need a motion to continue? Do we, or?
I think we
can
talked.
do that.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to continue the miscellaneous items from this morning to this afternoon's meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to continue those, I have to open it up. No, I do not.
This is procedural.
Okay.
Not a
All
substantive
right.
motion being voted.
We have a motion to continue the rest of our agenda, which is our miscellaneous item, to follow our 2 p.m. consent agenda meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.